Go ahead and get started. I think this is the last session of the Ignite conference. So thank you all for coming to what will undoubtedly be the best and most interesting, compelling session. And in this session, we're going to actually talk about Microsoft AppSource, our catalog for applications that you can go discover and deploy inside of your organization. We're from the Microsoft 365 organization, so we're going to focus today on some of the new things that we have coming for helping you deploy applications that integrate with Microsoft 365. We call these Microsoft 365 apps. So hopefully in today's session, you'll come away with kind of this tour of the new capabilities that we're rolling out to make it easier for everyone to go deploy applications. If you're an ISV, you will also come away with maybe some ideas about how you can better prepare your applications to get deployed through Microsoft AppSource and get them into the hands of your users. Now, I'm Mike Amerlon. I work on the Microsoft 365 marketing team. And along with me is Susanna Zhuang.
Yes, so thank you everyone for coming. I am Susanna Zhuang, also from Microsoft 365 marketing team. Thank you.
Yeah. So today we're going to cover the entire landscape of Microsoft 365 apps and how you can go deploy and discover them. But first, let me talk a little bit about Microsoft 365 apps and what those look like and what we think are going to be an emerging class of applications that will empower productivity throughout your organization. You've probably heard a lot about it through the past 4 or 5 days here at Microsoft Ignite, but we'll just go through it super quickly just to kind of set the stage. Then we're actually going to talk about new ways that we have to actually certify applications. A huge part of putting applications into your organizations actually comes from making sure that they're secure, that they have compliance policies put in place, that the application providers that you're working with have good plans for example, incident management, or they're compliant with GDPR. And so we'll talk about some new tools that we're putting together today to actually make that a lot more easy and accessible for you. We're going to talk then also a little bit about some new deployment tools that we have coming soon into your Microsoft 365 tenancies that will make it possible to quickly put the right applications into the right hands at the right time for all of your users. So end to end, we'll cover Microsoft apps. We'll cover how you can actually verify them and help to kind of make sure that they're going to work in your environment. And then finally, we'll cover deployment as well. OK, so let's go drill down a little bit on where we see Microsoft 365 apps. About 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when you were looking at applications in your environment, typically it would probably be some form of a Windows application. And this was an application that was designed probably for one user sitting on their one PC, a desktop PC probably. And the challenge for deploying that application was, OK, you've got this package of bits. How do you actually get that package of bits onto 10,000 desktops in your company? And yes, Windows applications still are fairly popular. We have some new tools for them. But there is that kind of a challenge that you have in sort of managing and deploying those applications. Even Office applications, they were also typically designed for one user at a time on one PC and providing just a really good experience for that one particular user. But the world's changed quite a bit in the past 10 to 15 years. One of the things that we find, for example, is that in the last 5 years, people are working in twice as many teams as they were before. And so therefore, actually what happens and what's interesting is making sure that when you start with people at the center, you actually have to start to bring together all the different data facets that they have inside of their organizations. So as people start working, they've got their tasks, they've got their teams, they've got the groups that they're a part of. Those are really key to any application, no matter what it's doing, that it should know the kinds of people that you're working with, the kind of tasks that you're working on, what your calendar looks like, and the like. And so it becomes more important for these application experiences to be aware of the broader world around people so that they can connect all that information into one place. Now, we have one tool for that. It's called Microsoft Graph. It's basically an API that allows you to get at those key information facets and pull them together and connect them up. But then in addition to that, the other major trend is, in addition to being into more teams and having more of these data artifacts kind of floating around, there's also more devices that people have that they want to get their application experiences onto, ranging from iPhones up through PCs and laptops, up to Surface Hub 2s. We've got a lot of cool new hardware that's coming out from the Surface team, different form factors. People want a consistent experience across all of those devices connected to the information that's relevant to them. And so we've started to build this into applications like Word, for example, where when you're inside of Word, you can very quickly add a task to it to kind of let your team know that you have taken on this activity to go improve the document in some way. You can mention people in a Word document. Those kinds of capabilities are just good examples of being more connected and being sort of just a new kind of application. And we call these applications Microsoft 365 apps. But what it means is, as you're going to go look to deploy these applications, it's also a lot more complicated in some regards. You've got to think about what does it take to get that application experience across different devices? What does it take to get that application experience connected to data with the right permissions? And what does it take to make sure that people can find and discover the applications? An application isn't very useful if nobody ever finds it. And so a key part of deploying applications successfully is also just making sure that it shows up seamlessly in the application experiences that people are putting together. Okay. So Microsoft 365 apps behind the scenes, there's a lot of technology that we talked about at Ignite that you can use to pull these experiences together. Across Windows, across websites, through browsers like Microsoft Edge, we have a lot of new client technologies to make it easier to build applications and websites that are at the core of a Microsoft 365 app. We have Microsoft Graph and Microsoft Identity. These are back-end services that allow you to connect and build these connected experiences inside of applications. If you want to access somebody's tasks or calendars, you can do it with Microsoft Graph. If you want to make sure that you have a seamless identity experience, it supports passwordless authentication, it supports two-factor authentication, you can leverage the Microsoft Identity platform. And then finally, we also really believe in the ability to extend and connect into Microsoft 365 apps. So applications can deliver extensions that also go into apps like Teams or SharePoint or Word or Excel to make themselves available where work is getting done inside of those key applications. So that's the landscape of Microsoft 365 apps, a little bit of the tech stack. There's a number of sessions this week where you can find out all about these different technologies and how you can better leverage them. If you're building your own applications inside of your company, if you're an ISV building your applications for a broad audience, there's a whole set of technologies you can leverage to build these better connected Microsoft 365 apps. But we've also improved the ways that people can go access those applications. It starts from an understanding that different types of customers acquire applications in a number of different ways. So for example, small businesses or maybe teams inside of a larger company, typically what they do is they acquire applications through a direct motion. So what they do is they go to a store, they go to the websites, they go to a search engine, and they look for, hey, our team needs a particular application for managing our tasks. And so through a number of different mechanisms, they'll go find an application, they may go purchase it, they may use their business credit card to go buy it, but there's a healthy number of customers that actually go purchase their application through a direct motion. And for that, we have something called Microsoft AppSource, which is our integrated catalog. It spans across Dynamics and Office and a number of other Microsoft properties. It has SaaS applications that stand alone as well. It becomes a great source for actually finding applications that you can go purchase and acquire and deploy inside of your organization without needing sort of a bigger infrastructure to go make that purchase happen. It doesn't require like a custom contract, for example. But we know that a number of our customers acquire software not just through direct means, but also through resellers. So Microsoft, for example, has a network of over 70,000 resellers who resell Microsoft software, but they're also the first line of contact that many companies have when they're looking for broader solutions in their environment. And so there's a reseller channel. That's another way that people go acquire applications. And then finally, for larger organizations, typically, Microsoft sells software to them, and we have salespeople, and we have field sellers who connect with major corporations and sell them, Microsoft software, things like Azure and the like. And the really great thing that we're actually introducing for the ISVs and for customers is that across all three of these channels, we're making third-party applications, things like Adobe Sign, for example, or things like, you'll see the list of applications. We're working to make sure that these applications are available across these channels in different forms. So no matter how you actually acquire applications, no matter how you actually purchase applications, this broader marketplace of Microsoft 365 apps can be made available to you in a very streamlined fashion through one of these channels. Now, if you take another look at what we think about as Microsoft 365 applications, we're also changing our sort of fundamental architecture for how we describe them. When I was on the SharePoint program management team, I used to be a program manager. We worked on building extensions to SharePoint. Our first implementation was we had this concept of an Office store. And the Office store was great. You could go find different extensions for SharePoint. You could find different add-ins for Office. And typically, we also had a way that you could go acquire them and pay for them. So you could go pay for an add-in to SharePoint. It might cost you, $1,000 or $10 per user per month or those kinds of things. A lot of flexibility. But what we found is so many of the applications that are in our marketplace, people don't want to charge for the add-ins. What they want to do is they want to make it easy to go discover the add-ins, but pay for a broader application suite. So in other words, you don't go buy the Adobe Sign for Word add-in. You just buy Adobe Sign, and then you want to go deploy those add-ins into your organization. So what we're doing is we're actually adjusting our approach to how we sort of market these different applications to focus on a concept of SaaS applications, software as a service applications. So at the core, inside of our marketplace and across those 3 channels that I just mentioned, we're going to have these kind of core offerings, things like Priority Matrix. We'll see a good list, things like Rike, make them available to users as a core application. And then all of the add-ins that go along with that application, whether it's an iOS application, whether it's like an add-in for Word or Teams, like those add-ins would come for free and just be very seamlessly and quickly deployed. So we expect that the marketplace is going to center around this concept of a SaaS application. So let's take a look at this. So one example is Adobe Sign. So as I mentioned, Adobe Sign is a great e-signature product. It integrates really well across Microsoft 365. It's used by all kinds of companies and organizations, in this case, the Iowa State Alumni Foundation, to replace paper-based processes. And so as you can imagine, it's a really great complement to, for example, documents inside of SharePoint. And so yes, you can go to Adobe Sign, sign.adobe.com and go use the application and go submit documents to go have an e-signature process on top of them. But they actually work a lot better when you use them inside of Microsoft 365 products like SharePoint and Teams. And so when we take a look at this diagram that I showed you earlier, when you look at something like Adobe Sign, it actually is an application that comes with a number of different add-ins and extensions. Yes, they have extensions for SharePoint and for Outlook and for Word and for Excel as well, I believe, and for PowerPoint, I believe. But they also have an iOS application, an Android application. And once you pay for Adobe Sign as a customer, you get access to all of these great add-ins. And so the goal that we're going to see a little bit later today in the session is how do we make it possible and how do we streamline the process of getting all these different extensions that you would want to deploy once you've purchased Adobe Sign into the hands of customers. And so this is really, our marketplace view of Microsoft 365 applications. Taking this universe of extensions centered on a concept of SaaS applications and trying to streamline wherever possible and make them available. As I mentioned, the SaaS service really lies at the core. That's the thing that people are looking to kind of manage and deploy. We have a growing number of ways to integrate across Microsoft 365. You've probably heard a little bit this week about Teams and the ecosystem that it has, a set of applications. We have things that we've talked about in terms of new technologies down the road, like Fluid Framework. There's just a growing number of different ways that people can go extend experiences across Microsoft 365. So just some other examples really quickly. In addition to Adobe Sign, like applications like Smartsheet, it's an application that we had here at Ignite and won an award for great integrations into Microsoft 365. Rike is a task management application, and tasks is just another one of those workloads where you want to access your tasks from Outlook to convert emails into tasks. You want to access your tasks in Teams to kind of make sure that your team can go focus on them. It's a great example of a Microsoft 365 application. Other ones like SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey's doing a great number of new and improved integrations with Outlook and with Teams. So they're doing a lot of great work there too. So the first stop that people usually have when they want to go deploy a Microsoft 365 application is to start to think about and consider the security and compliance ramifications of applications. A lot of times you have both end users and IT administrators in an organization. You want to make sure that the end users, if they're going to be allowed to go deploy applications, they can deploy applications that are safe and compliant and sort of compatible with the policies that your organization has put in place. And if you're an IT administrator and you're deploying an application throughout your organization, that's also going to be your first stop, is to go validate and look at all the different standards and compliance capabilities that the applications have inside of your environment. So the thing that we've actually introduced about 6 months ago that we're expanding is a concept called publisher attestation. So what this means is, as the different application vendors supply new applications into the marketplace, we're asking them to provide more details about the kinds of applications that they're submitting. So for example, you can see from over 40 different types of standards and validation criteria how that application has fared and what it's compatible with. This comes at the time of submission, so as they're submitting their application in a partner center, they're asked to fill out all these properties, so it should be there. We're going back and actually retrofitting this to a number of the applications that are already in the store, so we're working with a number of vendors to add their information to their existing entries. So it's a little bit of a process. We haven't completed it yet, but we've had, I think it's over now 80 applications that now have some form of publisher attestation in the store. This is all powered by Microsoft Cloud App Security. So Microsoft Cloud App Security is our separate product that actually provides insights into over 1,600 different applications that we've gleaned from the broader marketplace. So we're reinforced, if you will, by the set of information and standards that come from Microsoft Cloud App Security. Now, we started this with Microsoft Teams applications 6 months ago. We're now expanding it to all Microsoft 365 applications, so it becomes available to those as well. So let me just show you a little bit of what this looks like. So I'm just going to go to AKMS PA test apps. Oop. Oh, sorry about that. AKMS PA Teams apps like this. And so this is our catalog that you can see right here. And you can see a number of different applications that are in the marketplace that have different bits of publisher information that have been submitted into them. In this case, I'm going to start with Adobe Sign. And Adobe Sign is now certified. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But what you can also see is that there's a lot of key information about Adobe Sign. And typically, as an administrator, they would need to go collect this information themselves. They'd have to go to adobe.com. They'd have to go find the right page that maybe had some facets of this information. But here you can see, here's all the key information about their privacy policies, their terms, their contacts, their phone numbers, all that kind of information. But more importantly, we also have key facets of compliance that are listed here. We have the set of permissions that are required from a Microsoft Graph perspective in order to use an application. And in addition, we have a lot of the compliance standards listed here and how they sort of fare against it. So you can see a little bit more information about the questions that we ask and those kinds of things. You can see, for example, that Adobe Sign complies with ISO 27001, which is a very comprehensive standard, for example, for managing the different facets of managing and deploying an application through its life cycle. You can see that they're compatible with SOC 2. Of course, there's a lot of standards in the industry. So Adobe Sign, for example, has really great compliance. Adobe is, of course, a very well-known industry player. So the fact that they've got compatibility with SOC 2 and ISO 27001 is a huge, huge indicator that really should give you assurance. Of course, because there's so many different industry standards, they're not going to be compatible with everything. And you can see that there's also information about their GDPR compliance and more information there. So this is just an example, and you can also see their CSA star information and different sort of facets of that. This is kind of a cloud security alliance that's an independent organization that also puts together information about applications. And if I actually go to AppSource, so you can actually access AppSource through appsource.microsoft.com like so. And so if I just go into look for Adobe Sign like this, and I go here, what you should see is, if I actually go to their card, what you can see is, that publisher attestation is linked straight from their app detail page. So as an administrator, if you're evaluating the overall compliance levels of an application, you should look for this link that says Microsoft 365 certification. It will take you to those detailed pages that I just showed you earlier, and you can evaluate these applications for, conformance to your company's standards. So that's a little bit about the publisher attestation side. Now, keep in mind, publisher attestation comes from the publisher. We work with a lot of great partners, and there's a lot of great industry players, and certainly companies like Adobe are going to do a really great job of that. It is attested by the publisher. So there's no sort of specific further confirmation that this one criteria over here is actually legitimately sort of adhered to from the company. So the next stage in this is this concept of Microsoft 365 certified applications, which is Microsoft as an organization doing some of the work to kind of go validate conformance to the different types of standards and to a level of overall compliance that we think is really good. So you saw that a little bit with Adobe Sign as I demoed it just earlier, but it kind of consists of this logo and this badge that we have on these applications inside of AppSource that says that an application is Microsoft 365 certified. So the benefit for this is that this is kind of in some ways helps give you more confidence in deploying the application. Because we validated different facets that, yes, they said they're ISO 27001 certified. We have validated and seen the reporting that says they are ISO 27001 compliant. It makes it easier for IT decision makers and IT administrators to make more informed decisions more quickly. We're hoping that for whatever processes you have for evaluating an application, you're still very mindful of them, but this hopefully provides a shortcut to get the key information more quickly to make a deployment decision. We're also hoping this is great for business users as well, so that you can allow for a more permissive environment where maybe the business users can use an application in your environment if it adheres to certain criteria. One of them might be Microsoft 365 certified, so that you can empower users more quickly to deploy the applications for their teams that they need. And then finally, for ISVs, whether you're in the audience, whether you're watching online, if you're an independent software vendor who's actually producing new applications for the marketplace, we hope that this is a great way and a great way to show your customers that here's all the different compliance standards we adhere to make it easier for your application to get adopted by customers. So across the board, we think that certification will lower the friction and make it easier to go deploy different facets of applications. Now, the specific things that we look through in certification are across 5 different criteria. Now, first among these is application security. Essentially doing, what we do is we actually work with the independent software vendor. We make sure that they've had some form of security pen test from a reputable vendor, so making sure that they're paying attention to the security facets, that they've had some auditing on their security posture. We also take in a lot of the operational diagrams, things like data flow diagrams, to make sure that they've considered different security threats and that they're deploying with an architecture consistent with security. We take a look at the operational security of the organization. So are they doing things like making sure that the patches on their servers are well maintained and up to date? The key hygiene practices, if you will, that are consistent with a secure environment. All the things that you might know of in terms of isolating, for example, the networks and the resources that an application uses to deploy, separate from the actual runtime environment of the users and their business applications and the developers. We talk about secure deployment, making sure that they've got deployment practices that are consistent with security best practices, making sure, for example, that the process for actually deploying an application doesn't require that every developer have a key on their PC, those kinds of things. We talk a bit about data handling, security, and privacy, so making sure that that if they have data in their organization, that the access to that data is carefully controlled and managed, that no developer, for example, in the organization can go access that information by themselves. There's a process for limiting access to data, making sure that they have things like an incident response policy so that if an incident happens, they've got a way to go respond to it, making sure that they've got good logging in place so that they can detect issues before they become bigger issues inside of their organization. And then finally, we also take a look at their compliance with industry standards. So things like ISO 27001 or SOC 2 or PCI DSS. These are all industry standards with reporting bodies that can do auditing and make sure that you conform to these different policies. We make sure that we check to see that they actually have the reporting that they say they do that confirms that an independent agency has certified their compliance with a broader industry standard. So a lot of different facets. We think that, again, this hopefully will be a great shortcut for your organization's more comprehensive process for validating and connecting with different applications. Now, if you're an ISV, the process for actually submitting your application, we're sort of rolling this out slowly across Microsoft 365 applications. The first step is that as you submit your application, We have that publisher attestation infrastructure into place for Microsoft 365 applications. So we're asking that you consider all the different facets, that page of different security standards that I showed you earlier. We're going to ask all the vendors to make sure that they attest for their application. If they want to be certified, then they can mark themselves as being willing to be certified through Microsoft 365. We have a small intake right now as we're sort of working through and adding more vendors. But once we sort of select you to get through certified and through the process, what will happen is you'll submit your architecture and documentation. You'll work with our consulting teams to kind of go drill down and help them understand your organization's environment. If you've already adhered to standards like ISO 27001, with its very many compliance controls, we'll take that information in. We have a number of different differences from additional things that we look for in addition to ISO 27001, for example. And then finally, we'll do a number of different interviews and reviews of the application vendor's environment and consultation. If there are issues, we'll ask the vendor to go remediate them. And once they've gotten through this process and they've satisfied all the different criteria, they get a certification that's good for 1 year. So this is the process for actually sort of connecting with Microsoft 365 certification. We're working through Teams applications now. We're sort of starting small and adding more applications over time. So expect us to add applications over the next 6 months. And we're also, like I said, sort of taking in publisher attestation information for a broader audience of applications as well. Now, the result of all this is that now we actually have compliance across, we have 3 applications that are Microsoft 365 certified. We have Adobe Sign. We have Dynamic Signal, which is an application for communicating to all the people in your organization for sending out broadcast news and updates and information. And we have Rike, which provides task management services. So it has a great set of tools and infrastructure for managing tasks, for putting them into roadmaps and timelines, and then managing them across teams inside of your organization. And in addition, we have a number of publisher-attested applications across the board. This is just a small subset, but we're adding more publisher-attested applications every day, so that when you go to AppSource, when you see that link, you can actually go, follow that link and find out more information about the fundamental details of the compliance facets of that application. And you can take a look at all the other applications in our gallery here in our catalog of different compliance levels that we have for applications. So that's a little bit about some of the tools we're putting in place for certification and for security and compliance. And we hope that these will sort of streamline some of the deployments that you're looking to make. But we're also adding new tools to help with deployment. And so to cover those, Susanna, if you want to take that on over.
Yep. Thanks, Mike. So as Mike mentioned, I will continue and then to cover unified deployment. So before I started, just get some context on what exactly is unified deployment. So we first introduced the Microsoft 365 apps, and we want to bring a better experience into the customers and also to the IT organizations that you can better discover and acquire and purchase and manage those applications more easily and also from one single location. So that's what we refer to as unified deployment. So there are specific features and functionality scenarios that we're building up. So these are the 5 major ones that we are delivering. So particularly there are discover, purchase, acquire, test, deploy, and manage. So I'm going to quickly talk through each of them, and then we'll show a live demo to show how these ones works. So for discover, as Mike mentioned, for business and customers, you can purchase applications from AppSource. So really, discover is we bring the discover experience from AppSource to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So for IT, and then they can just discover this in the same location rather than you open up another web page and then you search everything yourself. And then the second scenario is acquire and purchase. So because we're bringing the AppSource together with the Admin Center, so that will bring you the easier convenience that you can also complete the purchase and then end-to-end through the through the AppSource that built in. The third one is test, which is very important that we know for IT and the customer that you want to test those applications and make sure that this works and meet your customer requirements and your organization requirements before you actually deploy them to all of your entire organization. So we provide the capabilities for you to test it and before you deploy the whole organization. The fourth one is deployment. So for the deployment, we have the flexibility that you can choose to who to deploy, when to deploy, and what to deploy. So that really is bringing the flexibility and also the different options to you. The manage is also a very good one. There are those applications that they keep doing more of the integration points with Microsoft 365. So any moment that they're doing more, and then you will get automatic reminder, and then you'll be able to see there are more applications for deployment that you can take actions. And then, of course, if you need to remove, and then you can also do that as well. So I'm going to switch to another window so I can do the live demo. Okay, so pretending myself as IT admin, so now I'm already logged into the admin center. So I will show the 5 scenarios that I just mentioned. So the first one is discover. So when you are inside the admin center, and then you can click on get apps. When you click on get apps, and then there will be a pop-up window that will pull the view of AppSource. So whatever the applications that's published and available in the AppSource, and then you will be able to see them all from here, a pop-up window. At this time that you don't have to jump on another website. So on this, of course, you can search all the applications here that is available. And then on the left-hand side, you can also search by the products or by the categories or by the industries. So it depends on how you like to prefer your searching experience and look through. And then you can also directly type the application name or ISV name, and then to search for that in particular. So today I'm going to use the ISV Affluence, and their application is Party. So it depends on how you go. So I'm just going to type the application name, Party Matrix. Yes, so you haven't finished, but they already load up all the applications integration points that associate with Affluence and Priority Matrix for the application. So this is how you discover the applications. Either you can look through yourself, or if you know the application already, and then you can just search the name easily. And next, we're going to look at the purchase and acquire. So this is kind of a very good example of Microsoft 365 apps. So they have web apps, and they have Outlook integrations, Outlook add-ins, and they also have Teams apps. So as earlier mentioned by Mike in the session, and then the concept is the SaaS applications being purchasable from the AppSource. So you can click Get It Now. And then there will be a pop-up window to ask for your information about before you can make the purchase. So I'm just going to type my name here. I won't make the real purchase, but I'm going to complete this step. So you can see what's going to happen next. So I'm just using my, my name and also my work email, and then going to put some numbers. Okay, and then there are specific terms and conditions and also the statements that we ask for your permission. So in that case, you can have the kind of opportunity to read through everything before you move on for the next step. So once it moved to the purchase, and then it opened up a new window. So, and then on this page, you'll be able to provide your credit card information and then finish the transaction. So if the application provides monthly purchase, and then you will see that option. If they also have annual purchase, you can do that as well. So and this one is a user-based or seat-based purchase. So you can type any numbers that you want to buy, and you can see the right-hand side already show the order summary. And so far, we provide the credit card purchase options that you can use company credit card to purchase. And then, of course, if I put all the information in, the purchase will be go live, will be real. So I will stop here, and then, but I'll tell you what's happened next. So once you complete the purchase step, and then there will be a new link that's direct you to the unified deployment. So I'm going to close this window, and then show that I'm landing on this page. So basically, it's when you finish, you get a link that points you to the deployment page. So now the third scenario starts, which is the deployment. So when we add the deployment, and then you can see that today, there are 3 that you can deploy: the Teams apps, Outlook add-ins, and also the web apps. So this is kind of all the options of this particular Microsoft 365 app that you can deploy. So you click on Next. And here is what we mentioned briefly about the test versus deploy. So of course, the recommendation is always you test it first before you deploy, and I think most people are doing that too. So today we're using the full deployment, so you can see the entire flow there. Okay, so when you move on to every single step, and then there are certain applications or certain web apps that require permission. So we do want to make sure that you carefully read the description on what this app does, and then what kind of permission we ask for. So for this particular, you can see that the next button is gray. So you will have to accept the permission before this can move on. This also to protect like your company's compliances, all of that requirements. So it brings all the information to you. So I'm just going to provide my consent so I can complete the rest. And then as I mentioned, like you will be able to see like what this means after accept the terms and then do the deployment. So I'm going to click on next. And now you can see that permission accepted. So, and then you can move on to the next step. Okay, so here's kind of a quick review window on what you are going to deploy. So to be deployed is Teams apps, Outlook, and web apps for priority matrix. And also is assigned users is entire organization. So as I mentioned, is at the time that we go live, and then you will have the choice to choose like who you want to deploy, like entire organizations, or you want to choose like specific users. So I'm going to click this and then finish the whole deployment. And once you finish the whole deployment, you will have a summary page to show like what has been deployed. And then you can go back to the admin center page. You will also see that that app will show up there on the list as a full deployment. So just take a few seconds. Yep. So here shows like the full deployment initiated successfully, and you can see like all of them finished. And these are the 3 that we targeted for deployment. So I'm going to close this, just done. And then on this page, back to the admin center, you will see priority matrix are here. And the status okay, and it's full deployment. And you can also see like what have been deployed is the web applications, Outlook add-ins, and Teams apps. So this is the deploy. And then next, I'm going to quickly show the manage. So for showing the manage, I'm going to use this one, Zoho CRM, to show the manage. So earlier I mentioned like for manage application, the good thing is if the application or ISV has done more integration with Microsoft 365, and then you will see the notice here says more application available. And then that's basically saying like you can choose more to do that. So if I click on this one, and then it's similar flow, and then but this will give you kind of a quick step there, saying like this has already been deployed, which one has already been deployed, and then which one is going to be deployed. So you can see that the deployed apps, so Zoho CRM, the web app that has been deployed, and then there are more applications that can be deployed. So on this, you can see 2 more ones. One is the Outlook add-ins, and the other one is Teams apps. And those are ready for your deployment. And then so you can click on the buttons. And then this provides you a description on what these 2 does. And then before you move on to the next step of deploy. Yep. So now we finished this, and then you can see a similar summary here on this page. And then I'm going to close this one. And then you can also see that now the Zoho CRM also changed as 3 products that have already been deployed. So this is a kind of 5 scenario that we have showed so far. And then I'm going to switch back. Yes, so quickly talk through this a little bit. So after the IT department and the customers have already deployed and bring the applications to the organization, and then we also want to invest in the capabilities that bring the users that with holistic view that they can not only see the M365 services and apps first party, but also see all these SaaS apps that enable for AD that bring to all of them, and then on the same location. So, and then of course, we also want to bring the convenience that they can search the applications through different kind of categories, and then they can find the applications for their use, for the convenience. So now is to summarize, now you have seen kind of the concept of the unified deployment, and also a quick live demo of what this is and how this works for the IT. So just quickly summarize the values that we see, and we definitely hope that you see those similar values as well. really is those not only for the ITs, and then we also see this provide some values to the different audience of the business users and also to the ISVs as well. So first we'll start with the IT. So really is we have heard a lot of kind of comments and also recommendations is kind of complicated for the IT team that to go different places, different locations, and then try to find all these informations and try to do all the activities, different things to deploy the application. So what we want to do is we're bring all these activities into one location, which is Microsoft 365 Admin Center. That's the IT use and then in the daily. So that's kind of saying we want to bring that from one single location. And then, of course, by doing this as M365 apps, and we also want to bring the kind of full value of an applications that can bring to your customer and your stakeholders that you support every day. Because all these applications, you're all Microsoft customers, and then you have the M365 already, and all these applications, when they build integration points with the M365, and then they can launch those services from any of their, any of the workloads, and then really convenient for them to use as well. And also fully integrated with the key workloads from M365. And then, of course, also, just touch base quickly on the simplify process. We want to make sure like the process we provide or the steps we provide are as simple as possible. So in that case, it's easy to use for IT, and then it's also easy to understand and consume the kind of the steps there. And then the last one is also kind of we want to shorten the time that from applications that to the users for actions. So and then by bringing kind of the end-to-end in a quick flow over there. So that's kind of a quick summary of what we see this could bring to the IT team. And then now it's mentioned quickly a little bit about the business users and business decisions. Because most of you, as an IT organization or IT team, that you support the stakeholders or you work closely with the stakeholders and by bringing all these applications that business users might need. So bring all of that and then also help the business users that it can get these applications in a consistent way and also very quickly. So, and then the other one is also because as our recommendation is, we definitely recommend you do the full deployment and also is all applications because that brings the full value of the apps to your user so that they can get the full value of the M365 apps. And then for ISVs, because all these experience of unified deployment and then if all of this has been happening, and then this really also helps ISVs, and then helps ISVs can bring their applications quicker to the customers, and also demonstrate better on their values to the customers as well from using the applications. So, so now we have some kind of recommendations, on how you can take advantage of this or how you can get ready for this. So really get ready. There are two kinds of audience here that you can take different actions to get ready for this. So one is from the ISV perspective. From ISV perspective, as we introduced the concept of Microsoft 365 apps, and then you have a core SaaS application, SaaS services, and then with key workload integration with Microsoft 365. So we would highly recommend the ISVs that build the SaaS applications or SaaS services, and then with integrations of M365. So that's definitely the first recommendation. And then the second one is, of course, for this to be launched, and then we would also need ISVs to link their web applications with their integration points. So in that case, this can bring the full kind of the whole portfolio and whole set of Microsoft 365 apps into the Admin Center. So that's more from the ISV perspective. From the IT and group perspective, there are several things that we want to mention. So the capability that were just demoed, this will go public preview early 2020. So we would definitely like you to kind of try and experience this and then provide further feedback to us and then to help us to make sure like all the capabilities and experience we're building that meets the IT requirements and also address your priorities and your needs there. So another thing we're also highly recommended is we are doing surveys. We're actually doing surveys here. Did the survey earlier at the beginning of the Ignite.
The remaining minutes of Ignite were.
And then we are also adding more of the focus groups post-Ignite. It will be online. So if you are interested in learning more, we're actually inviting our engineer groups and then to join the focus groups and then to talk more about saying, how's your view on this experience and then what are the right experience that you're looking for and then are we providing the necessary capabilities or are there anything missing that we should be considering? So in that, it really helps us to address the capabilities and also help us adjust our roadmap to make sure whatever we deliver and then really meets the customer needs. So, so here's the link. Then welcome everyone to sign up for. Yep, and this is just a quick recap and also call to actions. So if you're ISVs, as earlier mentioned, definitely highly recommend you build your SaaS applications and also make integration points with Microsoft 365. And then also during the session, you have learned the Microsoft 365 certified apps, and really it's important that you also participate on that, so that bring the confidence, and that also brings kind of the security compliance information to the customer that will help the customer to bring your application to the organizations much easier. And for the IT, and then stay engaged on unified deployment, and then join our focus group, and then also try out the public preview. So it looks like we're finishing up this early.
Yeah, well, so with that, we'd like to thank everyone for coming to our session, especially in this late slot, but thank you more broadly on behalf of the Microsoft Ignite team. Thank you for coming to Ignite and seeing all of our sessions. We really appreciate it. So with that, thank you, and if you have questions, be happy to take them.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That was a lot of good information. Can I test an app without paying for it? Looks like in the flow I had to pay, and then I could test deploy, but what if the app doesn't work out, and now I paid for X number of
So that's a good question. So there is some kind of a cancellation policy for the apps. So the monthly, I believe the monthly is within, I want to say is there's hours slot for monthly payment, and also there's also a time requirements for the annual. So not saying like, let's say 1 o'clock I make the purchase 1:01 and then I'm locked. So you have a time that you can cancel that.
And trials, right?
Yes, and the trials too.
There's some trial, like free
Yes.
trials on the.
Yes, some of the applications provide free trial. So if they provide free trial, the free trial is by default, first month is all free. So you can try that. And then also, I only showed the purchase, but actually there's also experience for acquire. Yeah. Similar experience that you don't have to buy, and then you acquire this, and then by consent, it brings you to the deployed unified deployment. And then you can do the rest of tests, all of that.
Yeah, we probably didn't make this clear. We have a lot of great ways for people to go buy apps through the AppSource marketplace, but there's a lot of companies out there that basically have their listing as free, so to speak, inside of the marketplace. Of course, they have their own mechanisms for how you pay for it. They have their own trial infrastructure, for example, and so they offer it, quote unquote, for free. We call it bring your own license. And make that available. And so you can still use a lot of the unified deployment tools that Susanna showed to deploy those applications as well, and the trial experience is really up to the ISV as they so choose. Yeah.
And one other question, apps can support multiple hosts, right? Outlook, Teams, for example. As an admin, can I select that I only want this to integrate with Outlook and I don't want it to integrate with Teams?
Yes, so you can choose which one that you want to deploy and to who.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much.
What about survey? Yep. Done. Yeah.
Yep. And if you have a survey, if you have still time to take a survey to give us a performance evaluation, that would be great as well. Thanks.
Thank you.